Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I want to say a couple things that I didn't earlier in service, and that is those of you who are wearing name tags, thanks a lot. That helps. I will try to learn your names as soon as I can. I'm Peter Munson. I live in Arvada. I was ordained in '91 here in Colorado. I came out of St. Bartholomew's Estes Park, started my journey there. I've served two churches fairly long term as rector, one in Westminster that no longer exists, unfortunately, called St. Martha's. And then after St. Martha's, I was in the rector of St. Ambrose Boulder for about 17 and a half years. And it was from that church that I quit my job to do this walk, which I'll tell you more about the background of it. I kind of retired in 2022, but I've been doing interims, and this is the second time I've filled in long-term supply for someone on sabbatical. Both Felicia and some of you might know Mike Kulik are very good friends of mine, and we have been in a clergy group together for many, many years. So that's kind of, Felicia started talking about her sabbatical, and that's kind of how all this evolved. The way I like to do this is to tell you to talk for maybe 10 or 12 minutes and then open it up for questions, because I find that's more helpful to hear kind of what maybe in my opening minutes what is triggered for you. So the backstory is in 2008, I'm a pretty avid hiker. I've climbed most of the 14 years in Colorado, and in 2008, I was on a hike in Rocky Mountain National Park in November by myself, and I was coming down the Glacier Gorge from that area. If you've ever been to either Mills Lake or the Lock, was coming down that trail, and I was about a mile from being back to my car, and I heard a message. And it was not audible words. I've since come to refer to these as Holy Spirit downloads. But I heard this message that was very clear and very concise. And it was walk across the country, teach and preach along the way, and raise money for people in need. And I didn't know more specifics than that at the time. And I came home from the trail, and I guess I was kind of lit up, drove the hour and a half back home and told my wife what had happened. And my wife is no longer with us. She passed away a few years ago, but she was a therapist, a licensed clinical social worker. She had her own counseling practice for many years. A very wise woman. And Julia said to me, "Wow, honey, that's awesome. Just be aware it might not unfold in the way you see it unfolding right now." And that turned out to be pretty prophetic, because it was then 10 and a half years between hearing that call and when I started walking. Some of that was discernment with the people at St. Ambrose. We did 2 rounds of discernment about whether this was just my call or a call that might also be a call for the parish. And when I first brought it up with them, it was clear we had just taken on a curate, and there was a lot going on, and it clearly wasn't the right time. And then, but there was a woman in the parish who had climbed all the 54 14ers, and she said to me, "Peter, you've never backpacked through trekking day after day after day. Maybe you ought to try something first." So I ended up backpacking. Part of my prep was I ended up backpacking the Colorado Trail over 2 summers, 2011 and 2013, because 2012 was a bad fire year. But I kept listening. When I first got this message, my kids were still in school, and it was clearly not the right time. We kept listening, and in 2017, at the end of the year, we did another very great discernment with the parish. And 6 weeks of talking, praying, discussing, praying. And at the end of, and it's 4 or 6 weeks, I don't remember. But at the end of that discernment time, we put a continuum on the board, 0 to 10 on the wall. And we asked people, 0 means this is a not for St. Ambrose. 10 means yes, this is a call for St. Ambrose and Peter. And we gave people little dots, and they went and put them on the scale. And there were almost exactly a third at 0, a third at 5, a third at 10. And the vestry looked at me. Some of them were very anxious and said, Peter, what does this mean? And I said, oh, this is really good feedback, because this means it's not the call for St. Ambrose. This is my call. And so I worked roughly another year past that and quit my job at the beginning of 2019. But in that 2018 year, I formed a support team that met every month at my house for once a month. I had a member from IBM who I met with regularly to help me plan the route, and that was much more planning. And then I also ended up forming a nonprofit, 503c, called Bright Future for Children, because by that time I had discerned that the call was to raise money for 4 different charities that do great work with children, all of which I had some connection with. The first one was a children's home / orphanage and K-12 school in El Salvador that I had been taking folks, youth and adults from St. Ambrose to go do mission trips to. The second one was I got to know about a mission in Denver called Street Fraternity. It's on East Colfax. It was founded by a man in his 30s now who came to the US when he was 11 from Eritrea as an immigrant. It's basically a mentoring for boys, men to boys, at-risk boys, high school age. And I got involved in that. And then the other 2 were Episcopal Church facilitated, related. I raised money for scholarships in our diocese for kids to go to summer camp at Cathedral Ridge. And I raised money for Episcopal Relief and Development there, K through 6. It's kind of a combination of early health care and education for the programs that they do for youngsters around the world. So the thing I like to emphasize in my opening words here are this idea of calling. And I always tend to say God's probably not calling you to walk across the country, but I strongly believe, and I kind of mentioned this in my sermon today, I strongly believe that God calls all of us. Not partly just the basics to be followers of Christ, right? But I think each of us, if we listen, will hear God calling us to something. And that might be through the work you do for a living. That might be through volunteering. That might be looking out for your neighbor who's homebound. It could be anything. It could be from small to large. And I also think that the way God calls us can shift, right? Like for example, I felt a call to become a priest. And then within that call, I heard this call. So the call of God upon our lives can evolve, shift, and I just firmly believe that if we're paying attention, if we're listening, we're gonna hear something, and we hear it in different ways. I mean, I didn't have a vision of Jesus sitting next to me telling me this, right? Oftentimes, I think we hear called through other people, for example, that give us feedback about what our gifts are or whatever. Or you might hear when you're walking down a trail, or you might hear when you're having a quiet time. You know, Felicia might very well hear some new aspect of call in her life while she's on sabbatical. So I guess if I wanted you to hear any one thing, it would be this sense of call. And then the second thing I really tend to talk about in these talks is, I guess the word would be trust. Like I really felt like I wanted to see all the ways that God would show up and provide for me in doing this. I had the route plan, which is over there. I started in Charleston, South Carolina, which is where I lived as a child. And I wanted to kind of go east to west, partly because of, you know, the westward settlement of our country. And I ended up in San Francisco, and it was this was in 2019. I started on March 4th, which Julia used to kind of chuckle about, March 4th. And I ended on November 16th, a Saturday. And then my last thing was on Sunday. I got to speak at Grace Cathedral. But I spoke, the support team that I got together that year before helped me reaching out to people. I had the route planned. What I didn't have planned was where I was going to stay. And we started calling. There was a little bit of publicity with the Episcopal Church service before I left, but we basically started calling churches. And the very first day I was walking, I got a phone call from, that's kind of how this all started from the beginning. Someone called me and said, hey, I work for this and this church. You'll reach us tomorrow. I'd like to put you up for the night. So I had a backpack and I had a tent and a sleeping bag. And in 257 days, I slept in my tent 4 nights.
Wow.
And roughly halfway through, I was like, I should mail this sucker back. I don't know if I was quite faithful enough. But that was one of the many miracles. And what really was helpful was when so someone would pick me up where I ended that day's walk, take me home. They'd always say, what do you want to do first? And I'd say, shower, please. And then they'd serve me dinner and the next morning breakfast, and they'd take me to that spot the next morning. What was really helpful was for roughly half the walk, I had people host me for more than one night. I was going roughly, well, I averaged about 18 miles a day, but when I got to Kansas, I started walking more miles a day. But so, I mean, you know, there were some people who hosted me 2 or 3 nights in a row. And then the special part of that was I didn't have to carry everything in that tent. I called those light pack days. But anyway, I walked Monday through Saturday, and every Sunday I was in a church speaking, and sometimes I would speak at a church on like a Wednesday night or something. And I had a website and I had an Instagram, and every Friday I did a live Facebook, I call it Facebook Friday, Friday video, and just tried to raise money. Confirmed quite clearly to myself that one of my gifts is not raising money. But I did okay. It wasn't great, but I raised about $75,000 and was able to give about $55,000 of that away. The rest were kind of my expenses. And part of the faith part of the faith leap was to quit my job and go from my full year-round salary to, I think I made $1,500 a month from the nonprofit while I was walking, and that was something that freaked Julia out, was how was our financial stuff gonna work? But we got through all that. So I think calling, trust, and then experiencing God's provision related to trusting, but really experiencing God's provision. And this psalm that I ended up praying with, especially the latter half of the walk, it kept evolving for me, kind of making it. I don't know if you ever do this, but it's great, I think, to memorize scripture. But if you can take a scripture and live with it, and it can morph into what's actually going on in your life, that's what happened for me with this song. So I think I'm going to stop there and see what your questions are. Yeah.
Where were you walking? I'm assuming not interstate highways or.
I was walking major roads, not interstates. And that was a new thing for me. It wasn't quite what I love about hiking, of course, is getting out in the woods and above the tree line and all that. But I did that intentionally because I was trying to stop as many churches as possible to speak. So I was walking against traffic on the shoulder, and it really varied. Sometimes I was on divided 4-lane highways, where the advantage of that was really wide shoulders. The disadvantage of that is, 65-mile-an-hour traffic. And then sometimes I was in little country, narrow roads, like I think of South Carolina and Georgia. Advantage of that was very little traffic. Disadvantage of that was no shoulder. So when cars came, I often had to literally get in the ditch while they went by. But there were only 2 days I had on trails. One was at the border of North Carolina and Tennessee. I was in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Had an amazing day. I grew up in South Carolina, and we used to go up to the Smokies, and with my family camped. And every time we went to the Great Smokies, it rained, and my mom said, "These are the Great Sokies." And I had the most amazing day in mid-April. It was 70 degrees, and I went with an Episcopalian who was a volunteer in the park, and it was a weird day too, because we walked like, I don't know, 18 miles on the Appalachian Trail. Or just part of that was the Appalachian Trail. But then you come out into Tennessee in that area where Dolly Parton's from, and there's this crazy, I don't know, pigeon forge. Yeah, and there's all the gorilla amusement parks. It was very odd after finally being on the trail, but that was a very memorable day. And then the other day I walked on a trail was in Park City, Utah. I walked over the ski area in Park City. I was on trail for like the morning, but all the rest of the time I was on roads. And little did I know, it was the first time I ever went to Park City, and then 2 years later, I was the interim director there. So, anyway, but yeah, walking on roads.
How long did you think it was going to take you?
I pretty much stuck to the route timing wise. I mean, it was 8.5 months. More people walk across the country than you think. I did not take the most direct route, as you can kind of tell, especially from Georgia up into North Carolina. I did that partly because I wanted to cycle back to Sewanee. But if people do the southern route, like roughly South Carolina to San Diego, you'll often hear people doing it in like 6 months or something. But I was, I don't know, they walk more miles a day. I walked 22 miles a day when I got to Nevada, and that part was planned in Western Utah. A friend from Nevada brought out his truck and camper. Because I walked Highway 50, which is called the loneliest road in America. There's no water. And so Tom brought his truck and camper, and then 3 other people, including some of you know Bonnie Spencer. 4 people took turns with Tom's truck a week each. We moved the campsite, the camper, like every 3 or 4 days, and that all the way to Lake Tahoe. And then the last friend took Tom's truck back from Lake Tahoe to Arvada, and then I was back in California on my own again. But yeah, that was the one part of that state and Western Utah were planned with camping support.
What were your 4 places that you used your tent?
2 early on in Georgia, and then 1 in Missouri and 1 in Kansas.
I'm curious what your wife thought about the
Yeah.
stretch of time.
Well, that's a great question, and what she thought about it includes, leading up to it. I kind of always already referred to, she was concerned about how this was going to work financially. Yeah, it was a big adjustment, and there were things, I don't know how it is for those of you that are married, partnered. We tended to divide up some things in our marriage, and I had always done all the financial, paid the bills and done all that. And suddenly she was like, oh, Peter, if I'm doing this, I'm paying these online, not writing checks. And I mean, there were just a lot of adjustments. And this was planned. She met me at different major cities. So she met me in Atlanta. The longest stretch was between Atlanta and Kansas City, which was like 3 months. And then she met me in Salt Lake, and then she met me again in San Francisco. So, I mean, it was challenging for her, and Julia started to have, I think it was probably the beginnings of her cancer, but we didn't realize it at the time. She started to have some health issues when I was walking. And then I finished in November 19. In December of 2020, just over a year later, is when she got diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And it was like 16 months between her diagnosis and when she died. So, I mean, looking back on it, one of the things she and I talked about was once she got diagnosed, she said to me, Peter, my walk was called 6 million steps for kids. It actually was just shy of 7 million steps, but I underestimated a little bit. She said to me pretty soon after diagnosis, she goes, now this is my 6 million steps, my path to healing. And we kind of flipped roles, because obviously on the walk, she was doing a lot to support me. And then when she got sick, I was doing a lot to just try to be there for her. So, yeah, it was, and of course, looking back, you go, whoa, there were a lot of challenges with the walk, but I didn't realize the challenges that were to come with all that. Yeah. So. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Peter, did anybody else join you as you were walking? You mentioned in the Smokies,
Yeah.
that trail, but what about any
Yeah,
other
there
place?
were a couple people spontaneously, like I spoke at that was in Sewanee. I spoke one morning before my walk at a Rotary Club, and a guy that morning said, when are you leaving? I'm gonna go home and change and walk with you today, and he did. And now and then, it happened a couple other times, but in terms of friends joining me, the first friend from Colorado met me in Sedalia, Missouri. And then as I got to Kansas, Colorado, more people from Colorado would join me for like a day or 2. The most memorable day for sure was the last day. I'd only I just left a very short, like 3 miles, and we walked over the Golden Gate Bridge. And I had, I think it was 21 people from 7 different states join me, including a few people from the cathedral at Grace Cathedral that I'd never met, but just showed up that morning. But most of them had either were family or some were people I'd met. That was a really special day. Part of what made it special was as we got to begin to go over the bridge, the fog lifted, and then just as we got to the other side of the bridge, all the clouds came back. So that was really special.
Practical question, how many shoes did you wear out?
I was on my 6th pair when
That's not bad.
about 500 miles. So I ended up going almost 3,400 miles the walk.
Did you lose a ton of weight or were you able to eat it?
I lost, yeah, that's a good question. I lost about 8 pounds in the first couple weeks, and then I just stayed there. And I think it was because I was staying with all these hosts. So I had some great, there was actually one host in Missouri where it stood out, but I had kind of a not very good bed, but that kind of was the exception. I had nice places to sleep and people serving me. I remember right in the beginning in South Carolina, the first night, this woman served me this breakfast that was like, I don't know, it had everything. It's like, I can't even move out of the chair. Yeah, so yeah, I just stayed at that weight after that.
Nosy question. How would you say that the walk informed your walk with Julia's dying?
Yeah. That's a great question. I love questions like that. I think Julia's death and the 2 years, it's just been over 3 years as of about 10 days ago. The 2 years since Julia died has been the hardest thing I've ever been through. I think the walk helped in some ways with that, with just me taking this on something big that I didn't know, what would come up. And I haven't really talked about some of the harrowing moments on my walk yet, but one of the huge blessings, both on the walk and with Julia's journey, is really feeling God's presence. And Julia felt that too. I would say she grew a lot in her 16-month journey from diagnosis to dying. You guys know what Caring Bridge is, where you can write someone going through illness. She would regularly write things on her Caring Bridge post, and she was always writing about what she was learning with God, and she definitely grew closer to God. And she had a strong faith to begin with, but I guess I learned in spades on both the walk and with Julia that you can have all sorts of mixed emotions at the same time. The joy, the sorrow, the feeling the presence of God, feeling all the feels, right? The anger, the sadness, the grief, and that God's there in the midst. I didn't feel the absence of God, and I'm very super grateful for that. I felt that God was with me and all the roller coaster ups and downs of all of that. And I think, I've been, as a priest, I've been with people when they've been dying. I lost my parents many years ago, but there's a whole nother level with someone you've been married to for 35 years. So just was a much deeper.
You talked about harrowing experiences. Can you share one or more?
Probably the earliest one was in Sewanee, Tennessee. I got charged by 5 dogs at once. They came across the street from this country road. I was almost to Sewanee that day. They were, I call them mediums. They weren't huge dogs. They weren't Chihuahuas. They were kind of medium sized. And they all stopped about where this owl is right here. And then this woman who I guess owned 4 of them very casually came out when I was like, and from that day on, I started carrying a stick. They didn't bite me, but it was pretty terrifying. Oh, and the comical part was I tried to spray them with my spray, and in all the confusion, I had it turned towards me. So that was interesting. I had 2 really close calls with lightning. One in Kansas where the weather was like what I call backwards weather, meaning it was like 9 in the morning and the storm came in rather than the afternoon. And I was in Kansas and I wasn't near a town and it was flat and there was nowhere where to hide. And my friend Randy had come out from Colorado and he'd gone ahead to scope out a hotel in Council Grove, Eastern Kansas. And I was trying to call him on my cell, no reception, and that was, you guys know that scene in Forrest Gump where Captain Dan is on the top of the crow's nest and he's having it out with God. That's pretty much what I was doing. And Randy came out of the hotel and looked east and saw how dark and it was, and he went, "Oh, I bet Peter needs help." And he drove back. It's probably about 15 miles, 12 miles, I don't remember. And I got in his car and he was driving back to Arvada the next day. And I was like, I had a serious moment where it's like, I think I'm done. And Randy kind of quietly said, "Well, you want to call Julia?" And I did. And I called her and I told her what had happened. And I said, I'm tempted to come home with Randy tomorrow and call this good. And she said, "Peter, it's amazing. You hiked from Charleston to Kansas. Nobody would, think any less of you if you stopped." But she said, "How do you think would you have any regrets when you got home?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I want to keep going." So then literally the storm went past and that afternoon was very sunny. And then I had another close call with lightning east of Pueblo. So those were some of I think emotionally the biggest challenge was I got lonely at times. And it was really nice when I got to Nevada and started having friends that month across Nevada that were with the camper, and they all kind of walked with me part of each day. But yeah, loneliness was one of the big challenges at times.
What do you think the loneliness might have taught you?
Yeah, it definitely taught me more about reliance on God, but it also taught me about asking for what I wanted. Like I had a group praying. I ended up starting a morning prayer text, and it's kind of interesting because now since the walk, I've still got 13 people that I send a prayer text to every morning when I get up. But yeah, I started asking people more directly, "Hey, do any of you want to walk with me?" and praying about that. And not like that prayer got answered. As I got to Colorado, more people were walking with me. I think that was one of the lessons. It's like speak up and ask for what you need.
Have you written a book or are you going to? Do you get asked that a lot?
I always get asked this question. I want to write a book and I know what it's gonna be about, and I think I know what the format is going to be even. I think it's gonna be letters to Julia, and it's gonna be a book about faith and marriage. So if you want to pray that I'll actually put my butt in the chair. I'm hoping to start it this year.
What was the favorite picture you took?
It's a great, I don't think I've been asked that before. Well, there's probably more than one, but one of them for sure is at the very end of the walk, when all those people were walking over the bridge, and my son and daughter-in-law were there, and Zach had said to me the day before, "Dad, you're gonna dive into the ocean, right?" I said, "Well, you're gonna go in with me, right?" He said, "Yeah." So I've got a kind of a slideshow, but the bad news about the clouds coming back over after the bridge was it was a pretty chilly day, but there's a fun pictures that my daughter-in-law took of diving in, and there's also a really great picture I like of everybody after I came out of the water, and all of us in a group shot, and they're all pointing at me. So I like that picture. But there are different beautiful pictures along the way, but I think that's probably one that stands out.
Besides the dogs, what are the wildlife you meet?
Well, I didn't meet as much as you would think, and I think that was directly related to being on roads. There was a deer that ran in front of me in St. Louis area the day I walked through St. Louis. The main thing when I walked into the woods to, I wasn't always near a McDonald's when I needed a bathroom break. So I encountered some snakes. There was a neat day in Georgia where I walked through a cone zone. I actually wrote about this. I wrote a weekly blog on my walk, but because it was noisy, right? Because I was walking along highways, and I had this day in Georgia that was a big construction cone zone, and they stopped the traffic, and I got to walk. There was places where it was stopped both ways, and I got to walk miles at a time. And it was kind of this aha moment where the birds, that I hadn't been able to see, or well, I've been able to see, but not been able to hear. It was really lovely. Like, oh, there's a sermon in there, right? Like the noise of our lives, and suddenly it's quiet, and it's like, oh, I'm just hearing these beautiful bird calls and bird songs. So yeah, I would say birds were probably the main wildlife I saw. I saved a few turtles' lives that were in the middle of the road. But those were probably the main things.
Peter, did you have anything, any signs or a banner or any indication to the motorists passing by what you and possibly your companions, if there were others with you, that why you were doing this, and thereby perhaps they could dial a number and
yeah, I had a 8.5 by 11 sized laminated thing on the back of my backpack that had my Instagram and my website and the name of the walk, 6 million steps for kids.
Right, but you're
And so-
walking into traffic.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you wouldn't see that.
Right. But it was funny how that, like when I would get in a town, sometimes when I'd take a lunch break, let's say, like there was this conversation starter. I had some people, see what, and there was a couple anonymous people that bought me lunch, they'd see my sign and I'd go up to pay and someone would say, oh, so-and-so just bought your lunch. So it wasn't a big, it wasn't super prominent, but there were also just some funny things. This happened fairly often where people would pass me and then they'd come back and they'd pull in front of me when you're not walking any farther, they'd pull off the shoulder and get out of their car and say, what are you doing? You look like you're walking with a purpose. What are you doing? And so then we have those conversations, but that was the main thing was the sign of my pen.
Do any Zoom folks have any questions? No, I think we're good.
Did you walk up the Buddha?
No, I haven't told about my other challenge. I got a new pair of shoes sent to me in Missouri, and I don't know, it's the same kind of shoe I've been wearing, but for some reason, when I started wearing those, I got a blister. And the blister turned into something that seemed a lot worse, and I walked all the way from Missouri to Colorado Springs, bandaging my left pinky toe every morning. And it just got so painful that finally when I got to Colorado Springs at my sister Sally's house, I took off my shoe that day and it was like some of the most excruciating pain I've ever been in. And I realized I had to stop my walk for a while. And that was emotional because it was like, am I gonna have to stop for good? And it turns out I had something called a pressure ulcer, and I went to this foot doctor and he said, you need to stop walking. So I took 2 weeks off from Colorado and then started walking again, and it wasn't as bad. I was able to finish the walk and it was partially healed by then. But now my route into Colorado was to Pueblo, Colorado Springs, Denver, and then I went up. I was supposed to go over in Rocky Mountain National Park on my birthday from Bear Lake over the divide to Grand Lake, and I didn't do that part because of my healing time. But then I was at Grand Lake and up 40 to northwest Colorado through Craig, and then I went to Park City from there. So I wasn't right in this area.
What was your route into California from Nevada?
Lake Tahoe into Sacramento, and then I think that's Highway 50 mostly. I went through, what are the vineyards? Napa and Sonoma, and then just north of the bay there. One of the directors or high executives for Episcopal Relief and Development lives in that area, and I stayed with Sean near the very end of the walk. So yeah, it was just going through Napa, Sonoma, and what's the last little, forget the town just north of San Francisco. Yeah, yeah. Took a ferry, before my wife and son and daughter-in-law came into San Francisco, and then went back to do that last walk over the bridge with them. That was really special.
Well, with the donations that were given to you along the way, how did you keep them in your pocket?
Well, some people, of course, donated online. I had a separate bank account for the walk. And when people gave me money, they would either say, this is for the kids, or some people would say, this is for you to buy lunch today.
Okay.
So Yeah, it's a great question. I would have the money with me until I came to a Bank of America. Sometimes that was 2 weeks later. And then I just make a deposit.
And you didn't have anybody say, I need your money.
No, I
you
had
were
a
able to
few,
get-
I had a few people. It started the first time in Georgia, and the first time someone asked me, I was like, whoa, but then I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I had a man in Georgia when I was coming out of a grocery store ask me if I was homeless. I had cops that would stop now and then and say, are you okay? What are you doing? I'm very aware that, in fact, I even had an encounter with a young woman who came up to me, I think that was in Georgia too, said, I'd say she was around 30. She said, I would love to do what you are doing, but I don't feel safe enough as a single woman to do this. And I'm very aware that if I were a person of color, I think it would have been a very different journey. I think I would have been stopped a lot more. So there were learnings like that, where you just try to take in, oh, okay, I look like I'm homeless, or oh, some people wouldn't be as safe in this situation as I am.
Did you wind up growing a beard? What did you do?
My hair would get longer for a while and then eventually get a haircut. Yeah. I think it was just because I had a full backpack, and my backpack was fairly new when I started. By the time I got to Kansas, it looked like it had it for 20 years. Getting kind of old, so I don't know. Some people that do this push like a three-legged, it's almost like a bike trailer, but it's something they
Like a dollar.
adopt that they push and carry their stuff in. But it worked for me to just do it backfire.
Besides the couple of lightning days, how much bad weather did you actually encounter?
I had a fair amount of bad weather early on, some pretty strong rains in the east. Georgia and Tennessee stand out. Another emotional part of me, I spent pretty much a month in Tennessee, and when I got in eastern Tennessee, I started seeing these signs that said Trail of Tears. And I knew some about that, but not enough. And so of course I got online, and it's like all the forced evacuation, of course, of the 6 tribes from the east of Oklahoma in the 1830s. And I cried a lot across Tennessee, and I ended up doing some writing and journaling about that. And I think it was multi-levels. I think it was, I hadn't maybe fully grieved about my parents passing. There was some grief I needed to finish about some of my work in the church where things happened that were difficult. And then I literally believe I kind of was absorbing some of like the grief of our nation's history on top of that. And then now I look back on it and say, well, maybe there was some anticipatory stuff with Julia that of course I could have never known about at the time, but it was pretty much every day, because I kept crossing those signs, Trail of Tears, almost all the way to different parts of Tennessee.
Did you even know you didn't even know you were going along it?
Not really. I mean, that was just the route we picked, and I had to change my route. I was hoping to walk more of the a trail across Kansas that was flooded. So I had to change my route in parts of Missouri and a little bit of Kansas. And Kansas, I followed a lot of the Santa Fe Trail. But in Missouri, I was hoping to walk a trail that was flooded out. So, yeah, but I didn't know, I hadn't taken in that I was gonna be in the Trail of Tears till I suddenly like, oh, here I am.
Started in North Carolina.
So did you try to use like rail trails and stuff when it was available? Or
Yeah, I think that part of, in Missouri would have been probably rails to trails.
the Katy Trail, I think.
Yeah, the Katy Trail, that's what I was trying to think of. That's the part, I only ended up doing a few miles of it, because the rest of it was flooded out. But there's a Discovery Trail, if you Google it, that's across the country. I think it's different trails connecting. And I think it starts maybe further north in Delaware or something. And as I understand it, a lot of that Discovery Trail is kind of rails to trails stuff.
How did you write? Did you write at night? Like, how did you prepare your sermons? And
Yeah, I had my little MacBook with me that I carried, and when the families were hosting me, I kind of learned early on, like by 8 p.m., you know, I want to be gracious if you're hosting me, but by 8 p.m. I was like, I gotta go turn in. And so I've always kept journals. So I ended up filling 2.5 journals. So I had a journal with me at the time. And then the writing that I did would be like after 8 p.m. the once a week walk, or same with the sermons. Yeah. Sometimes on Sundays I didn't preach. Sometimes they asked me to do this, to speak at the adult forum. So I wasn't out always preaching, but yeah.
Any urge to do it again?
Not the same route. I've thought about whether going like following the Mississippi or something and going north to south. Part of me wants to do the Pacific Crest Trail, but not all at once. I think I do it in stages, not all at once. The dream I really have right now is there's a trail through 6 or 7 countries in Europe called the Via Alpina, goes at the base of the Alps. And I think I'd like to do that again, not all in one walk. It's about 2,500 miles.
Does it have that same sense of call?
Not necessarily in the sense of raising money, you know, for a project, but it feels like hey, this would be fun to do as a retired guy hiking in the Alps. Yeah. I think I might start that next summer.
Did you run into anybody else that was walking across?
Yes, you don't have to stay for it, but I'm gonna do the slides thing here in a minute. But I ran into 2 young people. They were not a couple, but they had done some volunteering in California, I believe. I think that's right. And the young woman, whose name was Hannah, which is the same name as our daughter, said when this volunteering was over, she was going to walk back to her home on the East Coast. And this young man that she met said, "Oh, I want to do that with you." And I ran into them in Nevada, and there's a picture of them, and they were going west to east, in other words. And I found out, and then they were going to drop down to New Mexico, and I found out later on, and they started kind of late, because you know I finished mid-November, and I found out later they got somewhere to New Mexico and then stopped. And they were very different personalities. I mean, she wanted to get up, and I heard all about this. They ended up staying with me in the camper in Nevada for a couple nights. And she wanted to, get an early start, and he was kind of like, oh, we sleep in and just do whatever we want to do. They were kind of like. So, yeah, I found out they got to New Mexico and then they stopped. I ran into more bikers, and most bikers go west to east, I think, because the wind is more behind you. So I ran into more of them.
Are you in like a group of people who have all done this? Do y'all like know each other?
I'm not, but if you pull this up online, I'm sure right now you could find someone who's walking across the country who's blogging and posting and about what they're doing, but I'm not in a group.
No secret club?
Yeah.
You can't tell us about?
No secret handshake. I should tell you, this slideshow is about 30 minutes. It's set to music. So if you can't stay for this, I totally understand, but are there any other questions before we do that?
Did you get harassed by anybody on the way or?
Not really. There was a story that I didn't encounter that ended up being funny, that didn't start that way. When I was walking in Utah, my sister that at the time was living in Idaho came down to walk with me. And she had gotten in an accident hiking and had her shoulder in a sling. And so she only walked with me for about 3 miles in the morning. And there were two women on bikes that passed us. And then Betsy's partner at the time picked her up, and I kept walking. And these two women on bikes came back, and they saw me walking by myself, and they called the cops. And they said, and part of me now looks back at it and said, well, it's kind of like they were concerned, so good for them. But this state patrolman pulled up and said, what are you doing? I said, I'm walking across the country. Here's my card. He got on his computer and he said, well, these two women said they saw you walking with a woman in a bright green shirt that's in a sling, and then they came back and she wasn't with you, and they think maybe you killed her or something. No, that was my sister. I didn't kill her. So there were just some odd things like that, but I wouldn't say I was harassed.
Yeah, they were really upfront.
I was checked out.
Well, good for them for checking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we put that on?
Take to the highway, won't you lend me your
My nephew Kyle walked with me across.
your way and my
and then he
way
was raped
seem to
from
be one
army.
and the same. Mama don't understand it. She wants to know where I've been. I have to be some kind of natural born fool. I wanna pass that way again, but I could feel it.
Rainy day.
On a country road. Sail on home to Jesus, won't you, good girls and boys?
Kyle found the one side of the road.
I'm all in pieces, you can have your own choice. But I can hear a heavenly band full of angels, and they're
These are
coming to
Episcopal
set
Mass.
me free.
Georgia.
I don't know nothing about the wild wind, but I can tell you that it's bound to be, because I could feel
That's
it,
Kate Brown.
child, yeah. On a country road. Georgia, Georgia, the whole day through. Just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. Georgia on my mind. I said, Georgia, Georgia, a song of you comes as sweet and clear as moonlight through the pines. Other arms reach out to me, other eyes smile tenderly. Still in the peaceful dreams I see, the road leads back to you. I said, Georgia, oh Georgia, no peace I find, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. Georgia on my mind.
The pathway is broken and the signs are unclear, and I don't know the reason why you brought me here, but just because you love me the way that you do, I'm gonna walk through the valley if you want me to. First step, and I'm clinging to the promise you're not through with me yet. So if all of these trials bring me closer to you, then I will go through the fire if you want me to. Against me, and I'm all by myself, and I can't hear you answer my cries for help. I'll remember the suffering your love put you through, and I will go through the valley if you want me to.
strife. I hear that music ringing, it sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars? I know the truth, it liveth. What though the darkness round me close? Songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging, since love is Lord of heaven and earth. How can I keep from singing when tyrants tremble, sick with fear, and hear their death knells ringing? When friends rejoice, both far and near, how can I keep from singing? In prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winging. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing?
Way over yonder is a place that I know, where I can find shelter from a hunger and cold. And the sweet taste in good life is so easily found. Way over yonder, that's where I'm bound.
Back in El Salvador, where the
I know when I get there, the first thing I'll see is the sun shining golden, shining right down on me. Then trouble's gonna lose me. Worry, leave me behind, and I'll stand up proudly in true peace of mind. Talking about a way over yonder is a place I have seen
Bill, you got her back.
Ooh, maybe tomorrow I'll find my way to the land where the honey runs in the rivers each day, and the sweet tasting good life is so easily found way over yonder. That's where I'm bound. Oh, way over yonder. That's where I'm bound.
How many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man? How many seas must the white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? Yes, and how many times must the cannonballs fly before they're forever banned? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. Yes, and how many years can a mountain exist before it is washed to the sea? Yes, and how many years can some people exist before they're allowed to be free?
With a sheep farmer in Western
Yes,
Kansas
and
for about
how
4
many
days.
times can a
First night up
man
there, the sheep
turn
got
his
loose.
head and pretend
Try to
that he
corral it
just doesn't see? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. Yes, and how many times must a man look up before he can see the sky? Yes, and how many ears must one man have before he can hear people cry? Yes, and how many deaths will it take till he knows that too many people have died? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
Home recovery cost. Neighbor in Arvada.
He was born in the summer of his 27th year, coming home to a place he'd never been before. He left yesterday behind him. You might say he was born again. You might say he found the key for every door. When he first came to the mountains, knows his life is far away on the road, hanging by a song. But the string's already broken and he doesn't really care. It keeps changing fast and it don't last for long. But the Colorado Rocky Mountain High, I've seen it rain and fire in the sky. The shadow from the starlight is softer than a lullaby. Rocky Mountain High, Colorado. Rocky Mountain High, Colorado. He climbed Cathedral Mountains, he saw silver clouds below. He saw everything as far as you can see. And they say that he got crazy once and he tried to touch the sun. And he lost a friend but kept the memory. Now he walks in quiet solitude, the forests and the streams, seeking grace in every step he takes. His side is turned inside himself to try and understand the serenity of a clear blue mountain lake. Colorado Rocky Mountain High, I've seen it rain and fire in the sky. Talk to God and listen to the casual reply. Rocky Mountain High, Colorado. Rocky Mountain High. Now his life is full of wonder, but his heart still knows some fear of a simple thing he cannot comprehend. Why they try to tear the mountains down to bring in a couple more people, more scars upon the land. In the Colorado Rocky Mountain High, I've seen it rain and fire in the sky. I know he'd be a poor man if he never saw an eagle fly. Rocky Mountain High, Colorado, Rocky Mountain High. I've seen it rain and fire in the sky. Friends around the campfire and everybody's high. Rocky Mountain High, Colorado. Rocky Mountain High, Rocky Mountain High, Rocky Mountain High, Rocky Mountain High, Rocky Mountain
My friend Tim treated me the other day, the guy that day. 24 miles in the wind, 21 miles in the wind all day.
Then I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and
That's Hannah Canyon. That
with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. Raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up to more than I can be.
Again, the last part across.
And I never thought I'd feel this way. And as far as I'm concerned, glad I got the chance to say that I do believe I love you. And if I should ever go away, well then close your eyes and try. Feel the way we do today. And then if you can remember, keep smiling, keep shining, knowing you can always count on me. For sure, that's what friends are for good times and bad times. I'll be on your side forevermore.
didn't say goodbye to me.
Well, you came and opened me, and now there's so much more I see. And so, by the way, I thank you. Oh, and then for the times when we were apart, well, then close your eyes and know the words are coming from my heart. And then if you can remember, keep smiling, keep shining, knowing you can always count on me. For sure, that's what friends are for. In good times, in bad times, I'll be on your side forevermore. Oh, that's what friends are for. Keep smiling, keep shining, knowing you can always count on me. For sure, that's what friends are for. For good times and bad times, I'll be on your side forevermore. That's what friends are for. Keep smiling, keep shining, knowing you can always count on me. Oh, for sure, 'cause I tell you that's what friends are for. For good times and for bad times, I'll be on your side forevermore. That's what friends are for. Yeah. There have been times in my life I've been wondering why. Still somehow I believe we'd always survive. Now I'm not so sure you're waiting here. One good reason to try. But what more can I say? What's left to provide? You think that maybe it's over, only if you want it to be. Are you gonna wait for a sign, your miracle? Stand up and fight. This is it. Make no mistake where you are. This is it. Your back's to the corner. This is it. Don't be a fool anymore. This is it. The waiting is over. No room to run, no way to hide, no time for wondering why. It's here, the moment is now, about to decide. Let him believe, leave him behind, but keep me near in your.
But do you know how much elevation gain you had the whole time?
Ooh, no,
Oh, you didn't have a tracker?
no, I have the steps, I did. Yeah, I did 6 million, just like 20,000 short of 7 million steps, but I don't know the elevation.
It'd be interesting.
Yeah,
Were you sad that it ended or glad or everything?
kind of both, you know, I was glad the Pacific Ocean was there and I was done. And somebody,
said.
Thank
That
you
was
for
great.
sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.